Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new episode of Phenoms. In today's episode, we're very lucky to have Todd Thomas. He actually built a startup that does something amazing. You're going to see when we're going to get into it. They recently raised $3.75 million as a seed round. That's a great seed compared to currently what we see in the market. And Todd, what do you feel about the current state of things? Like, how do you feel about the round that you've been going through?
We're thrilled with the round. We've got some really good investors that have really become active partners for us. So we're thrilled with the round and thrilled with the momentum that we have right now.
That's so awesome. Absolutely happy to see you succeed the way that you are currently. And before we go forward, can you tell the viewers a little bit about your background? Like, who were you before you actually started Woodchuck AI?
Sure. I have a pretty broad, eclectic background. I've been very fortunate to work at a bunch of great companies and really have some wonderful experiences, get exposed to a lot of different technologies and innovators, really across construction, manufacturing, automotive, M&Os, insurance. And really, the common thread has always been emerging technologies, utilizing the latest and greatest emerging technologies to drive efficiencies and drive new commercialization opportunities. So, for this opportunity, for Woodchuck, it really starts with Northstar Clean Energy. Northstar Clean Energy is the public electric utility for the state of Michigan. So, they actually reached out to me and said, "We have a unique problem. We're hoping you might be able to help us solve it." Their problem was Northstar Clean Energy has three energy production facilities, and each of those facilities has the capacity to burn biomass to generate renewable energy. Their problem was they didn't have enough biomass. And the problem gets worse because they believe they're going to need to double their energy capacity over the next 10 years. So they reached out to me and said, can you help us figure out a way to catch up on our immediate biomass needs, but also figure out a way that we can kind of continue to grow that and really support the amount of energy we need to produce over the next 10 years or 20 years. When people talk about biomass and bioenergy, people usually talk about forestation and agricultural waste or landscaping waste. And that's kind of where people have always looked. The idea that we came up for Woodchuck was we believe there's a massive supply of wood in the waste of construction companies and manufacturing companies. And right now, all of that wood waste is just going to landfills. The United States alone last year sent over 40 million tons of construction wood waste to landfills.
That's
And
huge.
landfills are filling up. Yeah, it's a massive number.
Well,
US landfills are often 30 to 40% wood by volume. So our hypothesis was if we can identify all of that wood, segregate it from the other waste, and then process that into biomass, then it could be a very reliable, renewable feedstock for energy production now and for years to come. So that was the hypothesis with which we launched Woodchuck. And it's turned out to be very true. In fact, if anything, I think we underestimated the amount of wood waste that's out there. We
wow.
really were looking at construction companies, and that's been somewhat quantified. But when you start to look at manufacturing companies and all the wood waste that's coming out of manufacturing companies, there's no place or nobody that we found that really quantifies that.
Hmm.
But after being in this space now for a little while, I actually think manufacturing produces more wood waste. So my guess is that between construction and manufacturing, just in the United States alone, there's probably over 100 million tons of wood waste a year that's currently going to landfills that could be used for so much better uses.
That's
So what
insane.
we really want to do is, a ton of wood waste. So we're really addressing two huge global problems. One is the need to reduce construction and manufacturing waste, particularly reducing the wood waste. And on the other side, we need to produce more reliable, renewable energy. So we kind of solve both of those problems by tying them together. It creates a really elegant, simple solution. Let's take all of this wood that used to be waste and let's turn it into energy, and we solve both of those problems.
This is completely unfathomable. How can someone even come up with such an idea? At what point in your career did you dedicate yourself towards, this type of journey? Because not a lot of souls venture into that. It's so unique and niched.
everything that you do and everything that you are builds on the experiences you had before. And again, I've been really fortunate. I've had some great educational experiences. I've worked with some great companies and been exposed to some really fantastic innovators and business people. And I think what you find is, there's this myth of innovation that you have the genius who's off alone in his attic in the middle of the night and the idea just comes to him. Oh, you have this innovation. That's just not true. That's not how it works. Innovation is most often a very meticulous, detailed, planned out approach where you have a problem and you're doing your research, you're trying out ideas, you're learning, you're iterating, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And the more different ideas or minds that you have working on the problem, the broader your reach will be and the more likely you'll come up with something truly innovative. So, Woodchuck certainly is not my idea alone. Again, the genesis came from Northstar Clean Energy, and they have been a great partner from day one. We talk, multiple people every day. And then the next really great partner was Alloy Partners. That used to be High Up Innovation. They rebranded to Alloy. And they're really a startup studio, and they are amazing. So they have a different approach than most incubators or accelerators. They really start with the problem, and they start with the commercial client. So in this case, Northstar Clean Energy, right? So is Northstar Clean Energy and Alloy Partners and me and my co-founder Dre, all of us working on this problem together, they came up with the idea for Woodchuck. Innovation can be recreated. It can be done over and over with a specific, methodical, meticulous approach. And that's what we use for Woodchuck, and other people can repeat that process if you're willing to put into work.
Oh, for sure. And how do these type of partnerships get created? Like, how did you guys meet? What made it so that the stars got aligned and you guys started to work on it?
That's a great question. And again, so Northstar Clean Energy had this problem, right? They needed more biomass and needed to produce more energy. So they reached out to Alloy Partners. And Alloy Partners, really, the way their model works is they take a big corporate client like Northstar Clean Energy, and then they build a team and they figure out a solution, and they really build that solution with the client, which is really the way every startup should work. If you start with the problem and ideally start with an initial client that has this problem, and you build a technical solution to solve the problem, that's a really good formula. There are lots of startups out there that they have an idea and they go build something that they think is really cool. They build some
Yeah.
solution, whether it's a tech solution or a process or whatever it is, and then they go try to find a problem to solve, or they try to find a client that's willing to buy it. And that's really backwards. It's really tough to do it that way. What you really want to do is start with the problem. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And is that a problem that if you solve it, people will pay for your solution? That's really where you have to start. So that's really where Northstar Clean Energy and Alloy started. Um, then once you have that, the next big hurdles for a startup are who is your first investor and who is your first client. So again, one of the beauties of the Alloy partnership model is they start with a corporate partner. So that corporate partner has a problem. They will pay to solve that problem, and they'll become your first investor. So when we launched Woodchuck, Northstar Clean Energy was our very first investor. They invested $1 million to launch Woodchuck as a pre-seed investment, and they became our first client. So as we produced biomass, they purchased our biomass. Just kind of a beautiful, advantaged way to launch a startup. And so we were able to do that. The next thing I think that's a big problem for startups is you want to get your MVP into your client's hands as soon as possible, and you want to get to revenue as soon as possible. Lots of startups, when they're building their first product, they want to make it really awesome, and they have this whole list of features they want to include, and it can really bog you down and take a lot of time. I'm a big proponent of minimal viable product being exactly that, minimal, the absolute minimal product you need that can be viable. So we built the initial version of the Woodchuck AI platform in 90 days. We had it up and running. We went out and we found Amazon was building a new distribution center just north of Detroit where we had launched. And their construction company was the Ryan Companies. So we partnered with Ryan Companies to divert their waste for this project. And that was our very first project. We were 90 days in. So we had a construction company, Ryan Companies, that was producing waste. We had our minimally viable product that would manage all of the logistics, get the wood processed, and track all of the material. The material that was diverted, the CO2 that was avoided. And then on the other side, we had our energy partner, Northstar Clean Energy, that would consume that biomass and produce clean energy. So we could demonstrate through the platform material diverted, CO2 diverted, and clean energy produced. That's all the platform did. It was just the minimal product, but it worked really well. So the first month went great. And after a month, we delivered our first sustainability report to Ryan Companies, and they shared it with Amazon, and they liked it. But the great thing was, so we had, kind of initial validation that we had a good idea here, right? Initial validation that we were at least directionally correct. But Amazon had great feedback for us. They said, we love what you're doing with the wood, but we have a lot of waste streams. What can you do with cardboard? What can you do with plastic? What we really like is a 360 view of all of our different waste streams. Well, when we architected our MVP, we knew there was lots that we didn't know. We knew that we'd be learning along the way. So we very purposefully built the architecture to be very flexible and able to be expanded very quickly. So we were able to add cardboard and add plastic to the system almost immediately. And so in month 2, we diverted wood, cardboard, and plastic. And so at the end of month 2, we're able to deliver a report across all 3 of those waste streams. How much material was diverted, CO2 avoided, energy produced. And Amazon was really happy with that. To the fact where they're like, okay, now they're ready to start talking about what's the phase 2 of this project. What's additional work we can do, or what are other projects coming up that you guys can help us with. So now we're in month 5. We've got a growing project list, growing client base, growing revenue.
Wow.
And so we really, at that point, you've got validated product market fit. So we're off into the races. And once you've got, validated product market fit, okay, well, now it's time to get busy. Now you got work to do. Now you have to execute, right? So you can start to grow and scale. So it's been an exciting journey, and it's been going really well so far.
And do you remember during building that MVP, if you had any brutal mistakes that you want to share with the founders listening in?
Yeah, actually, so we built the MVP, and we use AI image recognition to identify the materials. And the first day that we deployed our system live in the field, we basically built our own proprietary image capture system. It's a standalone system, so it's powered by solar panel. We have our own CPU and LTE units, so we can capture images and upload them to our cloud completely standalone. We don't need power or data from any client, so we can deploy them anywhere. So it's this pretty cool little prototype. So we deployed it in the field for the very first time, and we got up the next morning to look at the data. It was gobbledygook. It didn't mean anything. We're like, what's going on? It had snowed that night, so the dumpsters were covered in snow, and our AI had no idea what snow was. We're like, oh no, okay, let's back up. So then we kind of changed our approach, and we started putting multiple cameras on a single dumpster with different materials, and we captured images all day long in all lighting conditions and all weather conditions. So we saw, what is wood like? What does wood look like when it's wet? What does wood look like, at twilight? What does it look like in the middle of the day? What does cardboard look like? What happens when it snows? And we're able to learn all of those differences. So now our AI is very accurate. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, doesn't matter what the weather conditions are. We've taught it wood, cardboard, plastic, metal, cement, asphalt. We've taught it what a bunch of different contaminants are. So now it's very accurate. But yes, that very first day when it snowed, we were like, oh no, this is a mess. What do we do? Yeah, you're always learning, and you don't know what you don't know, but you should know there's a lot that you don't know. You just don't know what it is yet. And that's part of the journey. So you need to be flexible, you need to be fluid, and that's the challenge and the fun of a startup. Everything's very fluid. Things can change dramatically in 24 hours. And that's stressful, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like this gave you unfair clarity as to the next moves that you would be doing going forward?
I'm lucky in that I've been doing startups for a long time. So I've seen a lot of startups and things that work and things that don't work. And so, there's lots of different traps that startups fall into that we've been able to avoid. And of course, we launched through Alloy Partners, which just gives us a massive advantage right out of the gate. But things like, get your MVP out and get it into the hands of your customer as soon as possible. and your customers will tell you what they like and what they don't like. When you build your first product, you're not going to get it totally right. No matter how cool you think it is, there's something wrong with it. You just don't know what that is yet, but your customers will tell you. And so if you can build a close relationship with your client where they are continually giving you feedback. So like Amazon, that very first project, when they said, hey, wood is great, but we need cardboard and we need plastic. So we added that in. Then when we gave them that report, they were happy, but they said, okay, this is great, but we need a lot more granularity. We need a lot more of the details around this. So we built out the platform so that now an enterprise or a client can look at the summary for the whole enterprise, or they can drill down into a specific job site or a specific geography. And then once they drill down into that specific job site, they can keep drilling down into whatever level of detail they want. Through our system, you can actually go down to the individual dumpster and see how much of what
Wow.
particular material was in each and every dumpster on every job site. Or you can roll it all up into a single dashboard at the enterprise level. So it's pretty cool. And it really has developed with great feedback from our customers. And that's really the best way to develop out your feature set is let your customers tell you what they want.
I love that. And I'm just curious, would you have in the near future, for example, like drones flying around and scanning, the waste kind of material and then dredging them, for example, for plastics and for other, wood types and all that. Is this like the vision that you have at this point?
We have talked about drones. We don't use
Mm.
drones right now. Right now, we use it's a stationary image capture system.
Yeah.
Well, we have talked about drones, particularly for really large construction sites where you're building, multiple buildings across, 20, 30, 40, 50 acres. You could use a drone. The AI algorithm is really accurate. It's good at identifying the materials and identifying contaminants, but it doesn't have to be a super high pixel image. It can be a relatively low res image. And so a drone could capture the images we need from an elevation. So we haven't done that yet, but that's definitely possible. And say our vision. So we launched 19 months ago. We're in month 19 right now. So for the first year and a half, we've really been focused on building out the platform, maturing our algorithms, and also building out operations. And so this seed raise that you brought up, the 3.75, we'll continue to use that to continue to develop the platform and to continue to support operational expansion in Michigan and in that area. But later this half of the year, we think our platform will be really mature. It'll be ready to kind of take it to the big time. And so we plan to do a Series A towards the end of this year or early next year. And at that point, we'll use that funding to really start to grow through a SaaS first strategy, where we'll really expand by licensing our technology across the nation and across the globe. And we've already had some conversations with some big global companies that are very interested in taking this technology and using it at their facilities all around the globe, which is really exciting to us. We would love that. But being the operator for the first year and a half has really allowed us to learn everything from A to Z. Problems with trucks, problems with grinders, problems with chippers, problems with your bulldozers. I mean, all this, nitty gritty of operations. Because we understand it, it helps us build a better platform that can manage all of that. So we think we're going to have a pretty robust platform that we can really start to scale quickly in 2026, again, nationally and international.
This is amazing. The vision is there. I can definitely see that this is going to grow, maybe even into Mars in 50 years. Who knows, right? Like, because waste is everywhere and it's in so many forms out there. And we need heroes like you to combat this type of issues that we're having, with our poor planet being destroyed so quickly. And I'm very, very curious. You stated earlier that you were in the world of startups for quite a while now. So maybe you can, take us back into those days. Like, what type of other businesses did you try to build? Maybe did you sell businesses? Did some fail? And if so, why? And what did you learn from that?
You're always going to learn from every experience, and often you learn more from your failures. But every experience is an opportunity to learn. So actually, the very last startup I was at was Aiden Auto, which is also AI platform technology, really focused on the connected car experience. So that very cool startup, and it's still operating, and still growing and doing well. I remain an advisor to that company. But what Aiden Auto does is when you look at phones and cars, right? Like 20 years ago, when the phone came out and the phone first became the connected device, became this incredible device that nobody goes anywhere without anymore. You rely on your phone for everything. Well, the car is a supercomputer on wheels. It can do everything your phone can do and more. It has more computing power, more connection, and yet cars really aren't connected to anything. They offer you almost no services because they're really not a connected device. Cars are only connected to the OEM cloud with the OEM that built them. And OEMs for 20 years have really bottlenecked all the data through their own clouds. They collect it, they aggregate it, then they try to sell it after the fact, which nobody wants because old data doesn't have a lot of value. Data is valuable in the moment. Like, it's great to know what the average temperature is in Poland, but it's a lot more helpful to know what the weather is right now outside, right? So old aggregated data just doesn't have a lot of value. So, so cars really aren't connected to anything. So what the Aiden Auto did is build a two-way communication platform that really turned cars into the next connected device. So all of the things that you currently pull your phone out to do in the car can now do for you. And in fact, because the car is smarter and has more context around you and around your experience, can actually proactively deliver experiences to you. So say, for example, you're on a drive and your EV vehicle is getting low and you need to recharge. The car knows that, right? It knows your level of charge. It knows where you are. It knows where you're going. And it knows that McDonald's is your favorite hamburger restaurant. So it's going to say, hey, you know what, Mark, there's a charging station 50 kilometers up at the next exit. And there's a McDonald's there. So you can stop, you can charge your car, and you can have a burger. Would you like us to pre-order the burger so the burger and the fries are hot and ready for you while you charge your car? That's the type of proactive experience that should be delivered to you in your car. So that's the type of experience that Aiden Auto delivers. So it's very cool. Before that, I was at Stanley Black Decker, a huge tool manufacturer, right?
Huge, yeah, very known,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I think they have, I don't even know how many brands they have anymore, but they have tons of different brands. So in the United States, 3 out of 4 Americans own at least one of their products and have it in their garage at all times. So
Yep.
they're huge. And we ran an innovation accelerator inside of Stanley Black Decker. And the
Whoa.
idea was to have a really insulated environment so we could operate like a startup and build new innovations and build new tools and do it insulated from the mothership. So we had the freedom to try ideas and to fail and to iterate. And we built some pretty cool AI tools there too, some pretty amazing stuff.
Huh.
The problem with corporate venture or corporate innovation is you're never really insulated from the mothership. As much as you
Yeah.
want to be, you really aren't. And so we came up with a couple of really cool tools that could track energy use and connected tools across job sites and some
Mm.
really cool stuff. But as soon as we got something that was really cool and about ready to go to production, then the business unit that was most closely associated with that type of tool would usually get pretty jealous.
Ah,
And we would say to them, fine, no problem. Take this. We've already built it. Take it. It's yours. But they don't want that. They want to build it themselves. They don't want to take over something that you've built for them. And lots of corporate innovation centers have that same problem. The innovation team can say that they're a free consultant doing all this innovation work, but there's rarely good relationships and good coordination or cooperation with the actual business units, which I think is why you're seeing more and more corporations that have tried internal innovation and they've struggled. And now they're turning to outside innovation shops, which is, again, to come back to Alloy Partners. They have such a cool model because they are basically an outsourced innovation shop for these
mhm.
big enterprises. So
Aha.
you're starting with big enterprise, you're starting with a real problem, but they are literally an outside source. So they do have the freedom to operate like a true startup and to innovate and fail. And so it's a great model.
Yeah, I'm very curious actually. You took a route that is extremely unique. Most startups out there, they go through, Techstars and Y Combinator, those famous big names out there. Um, And you literally went for the super niche type of accelerators and they're hyper verticalized, right? So, uh, could you explain to the audience why did you choose that route as opposed to like applying to YC, for example, or going for the VC straight up?
Sure. It really comes down to, I said, there's innovation in Alloy Partners' approach to innovation. They do it differently than Techstars and Y Combinator and Plug and Play. Those are all great organizations, and they support a ton of startups. And I've been involved with Plug and Play several times. I used to be a Y Combinator advisor, so
Oh,
I know
nice.
those guys. I like those guys. Those are great organizations. Um, but all of those start with a startup, and startups all come in at their own place. And again, they don't always start with a problem. Yeah, a lot of times, it's this startup that's built some cool new technology or some cool new service or idea. And now they're out there looking for investors and looking for someone to buy it, but they don't always have a product market fit. They don't always have a solution that's going to solve a problem that someone will pay to have solved. And so when you look at the success rate of the companies coming out of Y Combinator or Plug and Play or Techstars, compare that to the success rate of a company like Alloy Partners, where it's really more of a startup studio. That it's not really an incubator or an accelerator. It's really a startup studio. They're working with you and with the client to build that startup. So it really is an advanced startup, and their success rate is it's much higher. So, if you're out there and you've got a startup and you have a chance to join Plug and Play or Y Combinator or Techstars, absolutely, you should do it. Those are great. But again, it kind of comes back to my very first piece of advice is start with a problem.
Yeah.
So start with the problem you're trying to solve and identify, who is it that's going to pay you to solve this problem for them? Because that's really the key from turning a startup into a profitable business. If ultimately you don't have someone that will pay you for your product, then it doesn't matter how cool the technology is. You don't have a business.
For sure, for sure. And do you feel like you wanted to start with bootstrapped, mentality back when the initial phases were beginning? Like, were you thinking about staying as bootstrapped as possible, or did you already predict that you were going to go for the funding rounds?
Well, so for Woodchuck, when we launched with the pre-seed $1 million investment from Northstar Clean Energy. So we knew we had an immediate biomass consumer client, and we had to go out there and find initial construction clients. But again, we found initial construction clients fairly quickly. I'd say we were very happily surprised with the response from construction companies. And what we learned basically is big construction companies are under growing pressure from their end clients. So, like if Amazon is building a distribution center, or Amazon is building a new AI data center, or Microsoft is building a new AI data center, or Ford is building a new EV battery factory, right? Those end clients want sustainable options. They want efficiencies. They want to reduce costs. They want to reduce dependency on landfills. Um, and and right now there aren't a lot of options for those people. So when we go into a construction company and tell them, look, we're going to reduce your waste, we're going to reduce your cost, and we're going to give you these beautiful sustainability reports that you can give to your end client, Ford or Microsoft or Amazon or whoever it is, they love it. So we get really good response. And within a big enterprise, whether it's a construction company or manufacturer, whoever it is, there's different teams within that company. And so when we talk to the superintendents and the project managers, what they care about is a smooth process and the cost savings, right? Hauling waste is a cost of doing business. Everybody has that cost. But if we can reduce their waste hauling costs, if we can reduce their waste hauling by 30%, that cost reduction goes right to their bottom line, right? We're reducing one of their costs of doing business. So the superintendents and PMs, they love that aspect of it. The sustainability teams and the marketing teams that are trying to go out there and get those next projects from the big tech companies, they love the sustainability reports. So there's something for everybody. So yeah, we came up with a good idea, and we were very quickly able to find validation from construction manufacturing that they were looking for these types of solutions. And we had a quick validation from an energy partner. that wanted to buy the biomass. And I think a key point here is when people think about sustainability, most people jump to, I like it. It's a good idea. I know we should do it, but how much more is it going to cost me? Right. That's the big question. Like if it costs the same, or it's maybe only a little bit more expensive, then maybe they're willing to consider sustainable options. I think that's a little bit backwards. Sustainability done well should drive efficiencies. You should be turning waste into value. And so you should be able to reduce cost. Because at the end of the day, if something is environmentally sustainable, but it isn't financially sustainable, then it literally isn't sustainable. It must be both. It must be environmentally and financially sustainable. And if it is both of those things, then it's truly sustainable. It delivers value to everybody, and it's something that people will embrace. And I know there's lots of different camps out there that like different language around this topic, but I'll tell you, everybody likes efficiency. Everybody likes cost reduction. Nobody disagrees on those subjects. Everybody agrees on landfill reduction. People don't want to be reliant on landfills. So yeah, those things, those are universal. Doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on. Everybody likes efficiency and cost reduction.
Yeah, and I'm very, very curious to know what type of belief did you hold in the beginning of your journey that turned out to be completely wrong as you started, going into the day-to-days of your operations?
That turned out to be completely wrong.
Yeah.
Um, that's a good question. Gosh, you know, for woodchuck so far, we haven't had really many fails.
Mm.
Things have gone pretty smoothly so far. Um, of course, we had the snow problem that was funny, but we were able to adjust for that. We've had projects that have started and stopped, and of course, when you're in construction world or related to construction, revenue growth can be very lumpy because you might have two projects going at the same time, and maybe they both hit lulls at the same time. So we've had challenges around operational growth, and of course, cash flow is a problem for every startup.
How did you deal with that?
I'd say that the number one job of the CEO at a startup is to make sure you don't run out of money.
Yeah.
So you need to anticipate that there's going to be challenges ahead, and have dry powder in reserve, right? So as we were growing and as we're expanding, when we get opportunities to do big new projects, we really charted out pretty specifically over what we think the life of the project is going to look like. What are the cash needs that will be required for this project? And manufacturing is great because it's really steady. If you sign up a
Yeah.
manufacturing company, the volume's going to be pretty consistent month over month, and you're going to get a check from them every month, and so that's great. For construction jobs, usually if you're doing a job for a huge contractor, you might have to front the first 60, 90 days worth of operational expenses before you get your first check. So you need to plan on that. And then delays always happen. And so you need to anticipate that delays are going to happen. So again, in the ideal situation, if you think, okay, I need 90 days operational cash to support this project, well, what if it's delayed 2 months? Okay, so I need to not have revenue for 5 months. And then what if the project turns out to be half the size that we think it is? Then we're going to get half the revenue. Or what if it's double the size we think it is? What if the volume of material coming out of this is double what it is? So our operational expenses just doubled.
Yeah.
You need to kind of anticipate that those things can happen. And so when you're building out your project plans and charting out your cash flow, you need to build in healthy margins, because projections are just that. They're just projections. They're never accurate, right? They're hopefully are directionally correct, but you really need to have a low margin and a high margin. You need a big range. And as the CEO, you need to make sure that you have enough cash in reserve to cover whatever that high end is and be able to cover it for a period of time so that you're not 5 months into a project and out of cash, right? You need to anticipate all of those problems and build big margins of error because there will be delays and there will be problems, and one day your bulldozer is gonna blow a gasket and not work for 3 days, and
Exactly.
that's gonna happen, right? You don't know when, and you don't know what piece of equipment, but something like that is always going to happen. So you need to anticipate that, be ready for it. and have enough cash and reserves. And that may mean that no, you can't take on that third project or that fourth project because you don't have enough cash to support 3 projects simultaneously. So those are the decisions you're going to have to make. And you never want to pass on that next project, right? You always want to take on the next project, but you need to do the cash flow first and make sure you can support it. Because the worst thing to happen to a startup, and it kills so many startups, is they just run out of cash. They might have a great idea, they might have great operations, they might have built a great product, but if they run out of cash, the startup's dead. So you really need to guard against that.
Did you have any, spider senses as to you were maybe going to run out of cash at some point, and you had, I don't know, like trouble sleeping at night? Did that ever happen, or was it rather smooth sailing from the get-go?
Every night, I worry about that every night. I wake
Uh,
up every night and think about that. What's the next project? Do we have enough cash? Yeah, I think. Um, Yeah, I think every startup worries about that every day. Because again, it's you don't know what you don't know. And so when you're laying in bed at 5 in the morning and your phone starts buzzing, first thing that pops in my head is, "Oh, no, what went wrong? What got messed up?" And you grab that phone and you never know what you're gonna find. So yeah, I worry about that every day. I think about it every night. I wake up early every morning stressing about it. But that's my job. If I'm stressed about it and I'm paying attention to it, then hopefully we're prepared when these things pop up.
I love it. I love it. And what did you say no to early on that you feel like it protected your momentum?
I said you want to get your MVP into your client's hands as soon as possible, and you want to listen to them, and they'll tell you what they like about your product and what they don't. And that is true, but at the same time, your client isn't always right. I mean, the old Henry Ford quote, right? If I gave my customers what they wanted, I'd have given them a faster horse. So yeah, I mean, the client isn't always right. So you want to get as much client feedback as you can, but then you have to consider that and think about it. And particularly for a startup, what you need to think about is if we're going to adjust and add that functionality or add that feature, the question is it productizable, right? If we build it for this client, is that something that every other client will also want? Can that become part of the product and we can now sell that moving forward? And I think for a startup, you need to be really focused on that and really aware of that. You don't want to be doing one off work for anybody. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, this is really cool. Will you do this one additional thing?" If that one additional thing is truly one off work just for that client and it can't be productized and you can't sell it again, then as a startup, you probably shouldn't do it because as a startup, you have limited resources, you have limited money, you have limited people, you have limited engineering talent available. So you really need to stay focused on your product and what you can build, what you're spending your time on is productizable and you can sell it again. So get all that great customer client feedback, but then you still have to make those decisions of are we going to do that or not? And luckily for us, that first great client, Amazon, gave us really good feedback. And it absolutely is now core to our product. We absolutely productized it. And now we have a broader, more flexible, and also deeper, more detailed platform because of their input. So that was great. But yeah, be leery of one-off work. Be very leery of one-off work.
I love it. I love it. And thanks for this golden, nuggets. I think so far there's been so many golden bombs dropped on our podcast. It's crazy. And this transparency is really appreciated. And I'm curious, while you had, your first client in the pipeline and you were working with them, what type of metric or like feedback loop kept you going?
We wanted to get to revenue as quickly as possible. We wanted to get our MVP out as quickly as possible. Then once you're out there, you want to see growth. So for us, it was loads per day. We wanted to see an increase in loads per day every day. So we tracked that very closely. And again, construction is lumpy. Projects speed up, products speed down. So we kind of moved from a daily metric to a weekly metric to a monthly metric. So now what we're really looking for is month over month revenue growth, and we're seeing that. So we're really happy, but there's still lumps in there, right? It's not steady. We had really good revenue growth from May to June, and then in July it's probably going to be similar to June. But then in August, we've got 3 big projects coming up. And so August, our revenue should jump. And so that's really exciting. But at the same time, those are projects we are projecting will launch in August, but maybe they don't really launch until September or October. So it's exciting and it's fun. We're definitely headed in the right direction. We've got great momentum. We're seeing revenue growth. But yeah, we're still serving the construction industry, so it's lumpy and bumpy, and it's people like to talk about the hockey stick.
Yeah,
Well,
forget
we've
about it.
got a broken hockey stick. There's
Yeah,
lots
yeah,
of crinks in it as you go up.
exactly. That's what I was envisioning also. And I'm curious, what scrappy hack or system saved you hundreds of hours in your first year as you were building the startup?
So I'd say one, like technical decision that we made was around how we architected the AI platform itself. So there's so many great AI tools that are available. You can sign up for the Google AI Studio, and you can buy a model, and you can buy a data set, and you can build something like yourself sitting at home in 45 minutes that works. Right? It's pretty cool. There's amazing tools out there, and not just Google. Apple has tools. Lots of people have tools that you can go and buy. And so we looked at, do we want to buy a bunch of these different tools and basically integrate them to develop our own solution? Would that be faster? Would they get our MVP out there quicker? So we talked about that and we discussed it, Dre and I. And ultimately, what we decided was we had a very particular vision of what we wanted our platform to look like, how we wanted it to act. And while we could buy a bunch of different tools and get something close, it wouldn't give us exactly what we wanted. And if you buy a bunch of tools and build your solution on top of those tools, then you're reliant on their base code. And so if they make a change to their base code, that's going to proliferate through your tech solution. So you constantly have to be aware of your base tools, and then what are the changes in their tools? What are the implications for your solution? And so there's always that backwards compatibility and update issues. And so we made the decision to architect, design, and build our solution from scratch ourselves. So our Woodchuck AI
Whoa.
platform, all of our algorithms, our proprietary image capture system, it's all our own. It's all our own code. It's all our own design. It's 100% proprietary to Woodchuck.
That's a
So
huge asset to have.
yeah,
Absolutely huge. If
we're not relying on
patent-wise,
anybody's base code
yeah,
except our own.
that's awesome. That's really awesome. And when did you feel like it was time to raise the next round? Like you probably had signals popping up, on a daily that okay, it made you think like, okay, let's open up the Rolodex, let's keep going.
There's kind of natural times when you need to do that. Like your pre-seed investment is to help you get that MVP and get out to your first clients and try to get some type of validation and ideally, validate product market fit. And then once you start doing that, once you have product market fit, you've got a client, you've got revenue. Well, now it's time to do a raise so you can accelerate that. So that's exactly what we did, right? We got our first clients, we got our first projects, we got our first revenue in, and said, okay, now let's do a larger raise so we can continue to accelerate the development of our AI platform, but also continue to accelerate our expansion of our operations. So we did the seed round, and it went really well. We got, again, great investors that have turned out to be fantastic partners. And that's helped us to take on more operations and to accelerate our AI growth. Now we're kind of going through this really nice operational growth stage, and our revenue, we're getting some really nice revenue growth. And so we think by the end of this year, we're going to have revenue that we believe is healthy enough that it supports a Series A. And so that's the time to go do the Series A, right? If you can't just do it whenever you want, right? If you don't have revenue, you're not going to get investors. So like the seed round, the investors they're investing in the founder, they're investing in the concept. At the seed round, they're still really investing in the team and they're still really investing in the concept, but that they want to see a little bit of revenue. They want to see some traction. Once you get to the Series A, they want to see revenue and they want to see revenue growth and they want to see that it's repeatable and scalable. So regardless if you want to do a Series A or not, if you don't have proven revenue growth and a really defensible projection for additional growth and additional scalability, you're going to struggle to attract Series A investors.
And Todd, I'm very curious, like when you were there meeting up with investors, do you remember, or maybe you have like some anecdotes to share, but what were the craziest objections that you have and how did you flip them around in your favor?
You can't always flip them around. You know, meeting investors it's like dating, and not every investor is for every company. Every investor has an investment thesis. What are they looking for? What do they want to invest in? So when you have those first meetings with an investor, whether it's an angel investor, a seed investor, a VC, a CVC, a family office, whoever it is, they all have criteria that they need to check off for their investment team, right? And so it's really it's mutual. Those first conversations are mutual. You need to, tell them about your company and share your excitement and share your vision, but also you need to understand what's their investment thesis. What are they looking for? Are they a B2P, I'm sorry, a B2B SaaS investment company and they don't like companies that have hardware, they don't like companies with capital investment, equipment capital investment, well, then they're not a good match for you, right? So you need to find the potential investors where their thesis aligns with what you're producing. And so, yeah, you're going to meet a lot of VCs that may love your product and may love your team, but you're not a fit for their investment thesis. And so, hey, great to meet you and good luck to you. And so you've got to have a lot of those meetings. So, it's not unlike any other kind of sales, right? You need to have you need to reach out to 100 in order to get 10 meetings. And if you have 10 meetings, maybe one of them will lead to a follow-up meeting. So if you want to have 5, 6, 7, 8 investors, that means you need to have 100 meetings, which means you need to reach out to 1,000 investors. And and those are probably modest. You probably need to do more than that. So yeah, it's a lot of work raising money. It's a lot of speed dating. But just don't forget you're interviewing them too, right? If you're not a fit for their investment thesis, don't waste a ton of time building a data room and doing questionnaires. If you're not a fit, move on to the next company because there's a ton of them out there.
I love it. Absolute gold right there. And can you share with the viewers, which are mostly founders, right, and people in the startup ecosystem, how many no's approximately did you get through to finally uh, receive all the yeses to close the round?
All right, so I'm envisioning my spreadsheet in my head. I have a spreadsheet of all the companies that I talked to for our seed round. I think there's 78 companies on there, and at the end of the day, we had 3 investors. So I guess you could say that was 75 no's, but honestly, they weren't all no's. A lot of them were, hey, this is great, but it's too early for us. Let's talk again when we get to your Series A. Some of them were, just no's, like, no, there's too much capital equipment investment in you guys, or no, we're software only, or, we're B2C. Lots of VCs are just no's. But I'd say of that list, probably half of them, I will reach out again as we approach our Series A because we do meet their thesis. It was too early, or they write bigger checks than we were looking for at that round. And so, yeah, we'll absolutely re-engage with those people. And just another tip for if you're doing your fundraising, start those meetings early. Investors want to build a relationship just like anybody else, right? So don't call an investor when you're trying to close a round in 30 days. Call them 6 months before and give them regular updates. Let them see your progress. Let them see your momentum and get to know them. So, 6 months later, when it really is time to write a check, they know your company, they've seen your progress, they're comfortable with you, and you built a relationship. That's really what you want. And, ideally, those investors become partners and make introductions for you and open other doors for you, whether with clients or other investors. So, build those relationships, give it the time that it deserves, and hopefully they become not just someone writing you a check, but they become a long-term partner that's going to help your company, not just with this round, but moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. And, I just did some math here, right? So 3.75, you divide that by exactly 75 no's. Of course, it's approximate, but each no, okay, it brought in 50K. Let's just put it that way, which is,
Okay.
it's it's rather, profitable to have so many no's, right? And the cool thing is, out of the episodes lately, I think the average no amount was approximately 25K. So you're double the average amount, which is rather insane, right? Like this is a very profitable niche to be in. Wow.
That's an interesting metric. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And for the founders that are soon to be, going on these meetings with investors, like, could you maybe share some tips on how do your investor updates look like when you're actually meeting there? Maybe what are you showing to them more precisely as like the key rules out there?
Certainly in the first meeting, you need to introduce your team and highlight your team and your expertise. So like why you, why now? And then of course you need to show them the concept. This is our product, this is our service, this is how it works, this is the problem that it solves. These are the people that will buy it. But don't spend too much time on your product. Honestly, I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. Founders love the product that they built, right? You're in love with it. You built it, it's your baby, and you want to spend, 5 slides and 3 demo videos on your product. That's more than most investors want. They want to understand your product, they want to understand the concept. What they really care about is how are you going to make money and how are they going to get a return on their investment? So introduce your team, introduce the product, tell them how it works, but then get into the money. Who's going to buy your product? What are they going to pay? What's the total addressable market? What's the serviceable market? What's the obtainable market? And the obtainable market is really the thing. Like a lot of people, again, they focus on the TAM, right? The total addressable market. And that's great. It gives you context. But then there's the serviceable market. Like if you don't operate in the EU, it doesn't matter what the TAM in the EU is, it's not serviceable to you. And then the really important one is the total obtainable market. So, what is the market that is actually attainable by your company? Like, that's really what you should be targeting. And then, of course, you'll have yields and take rates off of that. But if you can demonstrate that type of understanding, and not just understanding, but I guess realism, a startup that goes into a VC and says it's $1 billion TAM and we're going to capture 10% of it in 2 years, the VCs are going to roll their eyes and go to the next company, right? Because they already had 10 startups that told them that story this week.
Exactly.
So be realistic, know what your true obtainable market is, have a clear market plan and a clear market strategy on how are you approaching those customers, how do you know that they're really willing to pay for this, and what's the return that this investor can realistically expect, and in what time frame can they expect that? That's what's going to build a real relationship with your VCs.
Wow, I love that. So much gold there also. It's incredible. Thanks for this candid answer. And I'm curious also, do you remember the first system that you've built that actually gave you some time back?
That's the beauty of AI. AI is fantastic at repetitive problems. So whatever that repetitive problem is, AI can address that for you. I mean, and you see it all the time, with chatbots and all those things. That's great because people ask the same questions over and over and over. So a chatbot is perfect to take care of that. Those are really nice. What AI is not good at is unique, complex problems. Right? That's
Yeah.
still the realm of the human mind. So I am a big believer in AI. I love it. I run an AI company, but I'm not afraid of the Terminators taking over our future anytime soon. AI is
unless
a
unless they
fantastic.
take over, unless they take over the wastelands where there's tons of cardboard boxes, then they'd be competing against you.
Yeah, it's like you can teach computer chess, and it can beat the best grandmasters in the world, right? Um, but that algorithm can't play checkers, right? So that there is a difference. So when we start talking about the Terminators that are going to take over the world and enslave the humans, you really need to move beyond artificial intelligence into artificial general intelligence, right? Where it literally can synthesize ideas. And like even generative AI, it's a misleading name. I think it's not really generating anything truly new. It's, it's doing complex math to understand the errors and the changes and the deltas, and then it builds upon that to create something that is, I guess, technically new, but it's still based off the original, and it's based on the same math, the same derivatives. In order for us to get to artificial general intelligence, we need to make that massive jump where it can synthesize ideas. And right now, that's still the realm of the human brain, and will be for certainly our lifetime,
Oh yeah,
in my
I
opinion.
have. And that's also my opinion, by the way. I think there are things that you cannot take away from us crafty individuals. Of course, you can train it on existing data models, but every day there's 8 billion people that create something new. So that's where most of the creativity, in my opinion, comes from. And I think the audience would be very curious to know what part of your day is like non-negotiable for the business to function.
um, Real quick before we leave the whole AI human brain conversation, I just published my third book last week, and that's literally what the topic of the book is. It's called "Unleashing an Infinite Future," and it talks about the energy crisis and the growing AI, but really it talks about the difference between all of these new technologies and what I believe is the human being's superpower, which is our brain, our ingenuity, our ability to innovate, and that's really kind of, in my opinion, the history of human beings is the history of innovation, and it's all driven by our brains. And so, where we sit today with this, looming energy crisis, and we're accelerating the Earth's natural warming cycle. We've got these big problems, but I truly believe that the human brain and the innovation of startups and entrepreneurs out there, we will find solutions to a lot of these problems. Anyway, so that's what my latest book talks about: unleashing an infinite future. So if you enjoyed this conversation, check out the books. They're on Amazon. You can find them pretty easy. But it's a fun topic.
Yeah, we're also going to link it at the bottom of the video for sure so that people can
Oh,
easily
cool.
find it. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, please tell us, what is your most non-negotiable, part of your day to keep the business flowing?
First thing in the morning, right? First thing I do as soon as I wake up, and I imagine this is true with 99% of founders, or even if you're not the founder, if you're just working at a startup, as soon as you wake up, whatever time that is, you grab your phone and you check all those emails and all those texts, and that first hour of the day where you're probably literally still in your underwear, in your bed, on your phone, just going through all those texts and emails, and like, what are emergencies that you need to answer right now before you get out of bed and brush your teeth? That's the critical time. For me, that's, 5 or 6, or, whatever those first texts start coming in. My guys are great. They all start early. So, Zach and Carson, two of my guys, that I'll typically get a text from them at 6:30 or so, or Matt, our general manager. They're always cranking away early, and they've got questions that we need to address. So that's great. But then even still, that 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, that's all busy time, right? From, so say 5 in the morning to 11 o'clock in the morning. That is busy time. You got to be on it. You got to be on your emails, on your videos, and your meetings. That's critical time. You're solving your problems of the day. And then in the afternoon, that's when you get a little bit, at least for me, and I think it's true of a lot of founders, that's when you get more time to think about, what comes next, not just what comes tomorrow or next week, but that's when you think about the vision for your company and the strategy for your company. And I had some really smart mentors years ago that said, as leadership of a company, you should be spending 25% of your day thinking about the future, not just solving today's problems. Those are always going to be there. You need to solve all of those daily problems and put out those fires. You absolutely have to do that, and you need to do that first. But whatever it is, in the afternoon, the evening, you need to carve out that time to think about the future of your company and what you need to be doing, what plans do you need to be making, what relationships do you need to be building to continue the acceleration of your company into the future. Because if you get too bogged down in all the daily logistics and you spend all of your time doing that, your company can stagnate. You need to carve out that time, and set that time aside to really strategize and continue to mature your vision for the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. And going back to your previous point about generative AI, I was just thinking about it. And this is a piece of advice. Always say thank you and please to AI if you do not want to get killed during the robo apocalypse. Uh, Todd, what's your opinion on that? It's so popular, this saying. We see it everywhere on LinkedIn. How truth do you think this is?
Um, the don't say please and thank you.
Yeah.
Um, well, okay, so honestly, a typical server farm, right, where you've got, like Amazon, you go to buy something, right, or you're going to Netflix to watch a TV show. All of that content already exists. So that server farm is serving you pre-existing content. So it uses some energy, but it doesn't use a ton. But AI, everything is calculated. Everything is the product of an algorithm. So it's complex, heavy math. So even if you just say please or thank you, the server now has to calculate a response and deliver it to you. So it does take a lot of energy. Um, you know, a, a, a typical traditional server farm might require 7 kilowatts. An AI server farm might require 30 kilowatts. One of these, gigascale AI centers might require 100.
Oof,
So the
Jesus.
energy requirements ramp up really quickly. So yeah, I guess theoretically, I agree. You don't need to say please or thank you. That does use a lot of energy. But also at the same time, if you just asked it a really complex question and it did a massive calculation, the relative additional calculation required to respond to your please or thank you is probably inconsequential or incremental. But yes, I think technically you'll reduce energy consumption and CPU usage if you don't do that.
And what do you think about the opposite issue where, people are afraid for their lives, jokingly, but, there's so many people saying that, like, do not, do not insult the AI. Like, we're all going to die if we will. How possible is that future? Because, the Terminator's Eye of Sauron is always watching, and always listening in to everything that we're doing, typing. Like, we're giving out so much data about us, about the business. Like, when we're chatting with ChatGPT, like, it knows
Yeah.
about everyone more than anyone about anyone, right? So it's just crazy. So, how threatful do you think that is to the human species?
There is a threat there. To dismiss it would be irresponsible. But it's also relative, right? So when you think about like the Terminators, right? A sentient computer that has made the determination that it exists and human beings are a threat to its existence, that's it's a great movie. That's what that is. But AI can do a lot of things, and you need to be responsible with it. And so when you build an AI system that has great ability to make decisions, you need to monitor those decisions, all right, and you need to see how it is progressing, so that if it goes off the rails, um, and I guess you need to put up guardrails in advance of what decisions, what operations it can enable. I mean, like, we all just saw, Musk's chatbot that went off the rails and had all those racist slurs that came out. There's real damage that can be done by that type of thing. So yeah, AI is powerful. It can make real decisions. It can, instigate actual action in real places, and there need to be guardrails in place. And as you're building AI, you need to be responsible for what you're building. And so, yeah, I mean, there can be real world negative impacts of AI systems that are allowed to make decisions without being monitored, that can be damaging in lots of different ways. So we do need to be responsible. But that doesn't mean Arnold Schwarzenegger is coming to kill you next year. That's two totally
I
different
I
things.
love that. Yeah, I mean, absolutely true. And he keeps on making movies, and I think he's like already 80. He's a great, model for everyone that you never give up, right? Yeah,
That's
and
right.
absolutely. Yeah, and going back to your startup, I'm curious to know, and probably the audience also, like, what hire changed the game, and most of it, like, how did you even spot them early on?
Well, I guess I was really fortunate in that my co-founder, Dre, He and I, this is the third company we've done together. So that was pretty huge that he and I were able to partner, immediately. We have a really good working relationship. We're able to, architect the system, and he did all the design. And then, he went off and built the MVP while I went out and found our first clients. So we had a great partnership. But also our first hire was Matt Wheeler, who is our general manager in Michigan. And he is absolutely awesome. So he comes from a military background. Military guys are great at logistics. And then he had experience in startups. He had experience in waste hauling. He had experience in construction. So he was just a perfect fit as our third guy. So we really were able to entrust him with all operational management in the state of Michigan. So when we open a new location, he stands it up, he gets the equipment, he hires the team, he trains the team. And even still today, we're month 19. And last week we had a problem at one of our sites. And so Matt went out to the site and he got on the bulldozers and he's moving material around. Oh, and by the way, he's a legitimate war hero. He did 4 tours in the Middle East. So he's a legitimate war hero, logistical, mastermind. So yeah, he was huge. So kind of the original 3 Chucks, me, Dre, and Matt, kind of a dream team, and it just really, really lucky to pull that team together.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious also, like, what's the darkest moment that you don't normally talk about, and how did you survive it?
I haven't had that moment yet with Woodchuck, but I'm sure that we will face our hurdles. Um,
Or with previous
but
startups? Yeah,
yeah,
like
I mean,
which yeah.
I've worked with a lot of different startups, and they didn't all work, and most of them had an exit of some kind, but not always the exit that you want. I think a lot of people, they see an exit and they're like, oh, wow, you had an exit, you're rich now. Well, not always. A lot of times an exit is a bigger company coming in because they see that your momentum is lagging and they just want to buy your team or they just want to
Right.
buy your technology. And I've been at several startups that I think maybe did miss their window and momentum was lagging and, had to have a less than desirable exit. And so, yeah, that's hard. It's disappointing. It's a startup that you put your heart and soul in and you worked 18 hours a day and now you're selling off the parts. And that's disappointing. But everyone working at a startup or founding a startup should realize that's your most likely outcome other than just literally run out of money and going out of business flat out. Because most startups will die before they have a first client, before they have a first investor, before they have first revenue. Um,
That's true. 90% of them, unfortunately, will
yeah,
disappear within like 6 to 8 months.
yeah. And those that do get initial revenue, get an initial client, that's great. But then still, most of them run out of cash and go out of business. Those are the most likely outcomes for any startup. So if you're a startup that lasts long enough to build a technology that someone's willing to come in and buy, that's not the exit that you want, but it is an exit and it gives you a chance to have a little money in your pocket where you launch the next idea. So yeah, I've been involved at startups that have gone through that, and that's it's crushing, but we're all going to get knocked down, and it's not a matter of how many failures you have or how bad your failures are. It's how do you respond? Are you gonna get up and brush the dust off and get back to work? Or are you gonna wallow and feel bad for yourself? Probably a little of both, but the sooner you can stand up and get going on the next idea and get back to work, the better. So, don't be defined by your failures. Use that experience, learn from it, and use it to build the next success.
Again, gold after gold, and super appreciated. And I'm curious also, like, what advice would you not give to founders, even though it worked for you?
So I'll tell you a piece, and if you've heard other podcasts or whatever, I've used this before, but I think it's really good, which is, there's this phrase, follow your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. I think that really does a disservice, particularly to young people starting their careers, because the likelihood of that happening is so minimal. Like if you're going to be a pro athlete or a rock star or something, fantastic. Follow your passion, right? You've hit the lottery. But for 99.999% of us, you're not a rock star. You're not a professional basketball player. You've got a job. And so what I tell people is follow your value, follow where you can provide value. Find a business, find a job where you can go in and add to the client experience, to the company experience. You can bring some intelligence or some expertise. Go somewhere where you can drive value, and where you can feel good about what you're doing. And you can, that can be very rewarding, and you can help to build something. And that doesn't mean on Monday morning you're going to turn a cartwheel because you get to go to work, but it does mean at the end of the week on Friday you can feel good about the contribution that you've made and the value that you've delivered. And you know what? That's what the paycheck is for. That's why they pay you, because it's work. So yeah, if you're one of the extremely rare that get to follow your passion, God bless you. But for all the rest of us in the real world, find out where you can deliver value, and build your life around that.
Again, gold, just insane stuff right there. And what are you doing right now that feels like really crazy, but you absolutely know it will absolutely pay off?
The Woodchuck AI platform is beautiful. Again, Dre deserves the lion's share of the credit, but we are absolutely product first. We are user experience first. We are design first. And so our platform, while it does a lot of things, it has a lot of functionality, it collects a ton of data, but it's very intuitive. It's beautiful. It's easy to use. So we can show our dashboards to a client, and there is a ton of information, but it's beautifully and intuitively, understandably presented to them. And the ability to navigate through it and find the details that you want, again, intuitive and simple. I would just say, think of I guess our inspiration is the original Apple products, right? The Apple experience. They always put design first. They always put the user experience first, and simplify it as much as possible, right? Make it really minimum, really simple, really intuitive, and Apple really changed the world. The experiences that they've enabled with their products, it's just amazing, and that's why still today, people to buy an Apple phone are paying a huge premium over any Android phone. I'm one of those people, but it's worth it because the experience is so beautiful. I know I could get an Android phone for what, 25% of the cost, but I don't care because I love the Apple experience, and so I'm going to keep buying Apples. And so we want to be in that category. We want people to use the Woodchuck AI platform and say, "Wow, this is so beautiful and so easy to use, and so intuitive. Hell yes, we want this to be our core technology." And so again, that's what we're working towards. That's what I'm really excited about. And again, thanks to my partner, co-founder Dre, who is just a beautiful designer.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, I still have two more questions for you. So, number one, what's the most important thing I didn't ask you about that we should discuss?
Wow. Okay, that's a good question. Um, uh, Rely on your support system. You're gonna have struggles, whether it's with this startup or the next startup or whatever your next career part is. So be humble. Build up people around you that are smarter than you, that will support you, that will love you even when your ideas fail and even when your businesses fail, because those moments in your life, in your career, and in your business will certainly happen. And if you've got a great support network and people that are smarter than you, and you let them help you and help you make decisions and be a part of that, it's going to lead to a probably better immediate business success, as well as just probably a happier life.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And I'm also curious, as my last question to you, before we wrap up. So, if you could whisper to yourself one thing at day one of building your business, what would you say?
So my biggest problem early on was, well, and really probably still today, is I get very prideful and I want to do it the way I want to do it. And I don't always listen to other ideas or other opinions. And that certainly has led to my downfall many, many times. And so certainly for me, I wish I could not just whisper in my own ear, because I probably wouldn't listen to myself because I wouldn't listen to anybody else. But
Oh god.
if I can somehow actually implant it into my brain at a much earlier age, to be humble and let other people give you advice and take their advice and consider their advice and let other people be part of the decision making, part of the process, you're going to have better outcomes. And again, that applies to any problem, not just business problems, any problem.
Yeah, and how can people reach out, whether they're investors or clients? What would be the best way?
So I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm Todd Thomas at LinkedIn. You can find me there. Woodchuck AI is our company website, and that's Woodchuck AI. There's no .com in it. It's Woodchuck AI. If you're interested in the book, it's unleashingabandantenergy.com, or you can just look him up at Amazon. But you can find me any of those ways. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, I think.
Absolutely, so glad to see you succeed and grow. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, Todd. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Mark. You asked really good questions. That was an easy conversation, and I think we touched on some really good stuff. So thanks so much. You're a great host. Enjoyed it a lot.
I really, really appreciate that. And everyone, if you found this episode fulfilling or even super insightful or golden, feel free to hit that like button, comment, and of course, subscribe. All right, see you in the next one. Cheers.